Ooh. Wow.
See, the point was to have that white ball spinning like that for a long time.
All right, so what do you think this idea that's popular right now with, like you have to do the hustle, so much hustle all the time, or you have to 10x everything and just be working like 30 hours a day, in order to have success as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think that there are times when I hustle like crazy, but you have to ask yourself, is the hustler lifestyle what you want? I mean, do you actually enjoy like working all the time, or what do you want out of life? If you
I want to win this game.
You want to win this game. If you enjoy what you do, then it doesn't really matter how hard you work. It's just literally, it's up to you. Like, I don't think that you should hustle for the sake of hustling. I don't think you should be working your ass off because you feel obligated that you're a pussy if you don't work really hard.
I guess I kind of have a different view. I think that anything that you like have to do is going to eventually be like work. So like if you say there's something that you enjoy doing, and you say, well then, it'll never be, like, the saying, the Confucius thing that they always say, it's like, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yep.
I think it's bullshit. I think it's like, the best way to turn something you love into something you hate is to make it like your job,
Yeah, that's true too.
But I think it's your shot, right?
I thought it was yours, but I'll take it.
Oh.
Am I stripes?
We'll check the footage later. We'll see if your win or your loss is legit. I forget what I was saying.
You're saying that a job, if it becomes a job, the quickest way to like kill something you love is to turn it into your job.
There's an element of the hustle that's needed in the beginning, of course,
Yeah, I work really hard in the beginning when we're setting up something new, so that I can automate it, so that it can stop being, so I don't have to do it anymore. But I move on to something else that I love. I want to like expand. I want to work really hard, take a little break, and kind of like see. But my process is a creative process. So, like, if I don't have the downtime between hustle projects or whatever you want to call it, then my creativity suffers for it. It's those downtimes where I get my creative, flow from. So if I'm working my ass off, that's because I've already had the creative idea. I've got this vision, this quest in mind, and I'm off to the races, and I can focus on delivering on that thing.
It's because you've got like an internal drive that's pushing you. It's not because you're like forced to do the thing.
No, it's just I'm determined. It's determination. I'm determined to make this vision a reality because that's what drives me. I love creation, and I love bringing my ideas to fruition and actually seeing them, realizing those ideas. But my creativity kind of like goes down during those really hard working phases. So if I'm this is why you'll see some of these guys who talk about 10xing are like, it's all about the hustle, but they're just doing the same thing day after day after day after day after day after day,
right?
Because they're not separating themselves, getting out in nature and just relaxing and stepping away long enough to actually have a creative idea, where they can actually do something.
I think you're just stalling because you don't have a shot.
I don't have a shot.
But there's also something to be said about working smarter and not harder, and kind of planning out the best strategy.
This is a $100 shot. If I make this shot, I expect a $100 bill.
All right, well,
but
you can expect whatever you want.
I'm not paying $100 if I miss it, because...
See what it's like working with this guy? This is my partner.
Yeah.
See, I had to wait all that time for that. All right, so anyway. there's the element of like when you're starting a new project and you're passionate about it. I mean, you're going to hustle anyways if you're really into it, doing something that you want to bring your vision to fruition, like you just said. My vision was to sink that ball and bring it back and sink that ball. But then there's like the other side where it's like the working smarter rather than harder, which is kind of my approach that I generally like to take. When possible. I mean, there's some times when you just gotta do the work and get something done, but I think a lot can be said for strategy and planning so that you can. This is a bad example.
I don't know how many times I've heard you say like, yeah, but I'll come up with an idea and be like, yeah, but that sounds like work, And I'm like,
I mean, I don't like work just for the sake of work. And I don't like...
Well, if you can do something without working, I mean, with something easier, smarter, not harder.
Well, I also don't like to do work on something that I've already done the work and it can now be a process instead of being like, do the work over and over and over again. That's what I hate. When somebody's like, okay, now go do this again. And I'm like, well, I already figured that out. Why do I have to do it again? It should just be like automated.
No, but I like the thought process that you have where, I mean, because you challenge everything that I do, if it sounds like work, that's by your definition of what work is. Work you associate with pain, but it's not just the work. I mean, you work really hard when you're into something, but if it feels like work, then that means that you're not enjoying it,
Ooh,
yeah.
That was good timing.
Yes, it was.
Are you enjoying this?
Not really. I suck. I played 4 games of pool in the last 4 years, and 4 of them have been in the last 24 hours.
All right. So, but what do you think about the guys that are out there like in social media and stuff that are just like, if you're not working so hard, you don't want it. Nah, nah, nah.
It's bullshit. It's a bullshit stance I think people take just to make themselves, seem important. Yeah, it's bullshit. But it touches on a nerve though. It touches on a nerve for people, and it challenges a bit of a paradigm, shift kind of thing that a lot of people think, they say work smarter, not harder. And so this idea that they don't have, that they're being pussies if they don't work hard, that the solution is to just work harder because that's what I do. Well, you're talking about somebody who has ADD, somebody they can't stand still for a second, Of course that's going to be their argument because they have to constantly be up at 4:30 in the morning, working till 10:30 at night because they've had 12 cups of coffee, just naturally is what they feel like. But well, I think most people.
It's funny that we talk about like whether you should work hard or not, and then we both play pool where we're both like obviously horrible at pool. It's starting to feel like work. Kicking your ass. I didn't mean to make that.
That hole's gone. Okay.
So the hustle is kind of, well, it's not entirely bullshit.
No.
Right? There's some element of truth to it.
It's just that's not the secret. The secret is not the hustle.
So what's the secret?
It's balance, probably more than anything. When it comes to that particular question, it's just
like, what's an example? What do you mean by balance?
Well, I mean, like when we're running a new program or something, there's always going to be a period of time where you have to hustle really hard in the beginning. It's like if for a rocket to, all right, that was a good one right there. For a rocket to take flight, it has to work really, really, really hard in the beginning. And then once it gets out of the atmosphere,
to reach escape velocity.
Yeah, escape velocity. And once it gets out there, it's just smooth sailing. There's no energy. It doesn't require any energy to continue. So every business that I've ever started, it always starts out with the hustle. If you're not,
but it has to be pointed in the right direction, or you're going to miss the moon and you're going to end up in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's
space.
true. I mean, you want to invest your energies into the right thing, but we typically have a good history of doing that, you know. But I think that's partly, like I said, though, that's about putting yourself in that zone where you have creative, you know, your creative juices are flowing, and you can't miss because you're like, you know, you're really plugged in. But you know, if you're constantly in the hustle, it's really difficult to remain plugged in all the time.
But what about people that are not naturally creative, or they don't think that they're creative? Like, what might you say to someone like that?
Well, I believe that everybody is creative. I believe that people have been taught, they've been restricted, their creativity has been restricted, you know, through school. And you know, you get out there and people say how art, you know, and music and a lot of these, you know, artistic classes in school are just a waste of time, and stop daydreaming, you know, stop dreaming, and you know, get serious. And so they've been taught to kind of shift away from the creative thinking.
Have you seen the TED Talk by, I think it's like Sir Ken Robinson or something, How Schools Destroy Creativity?
Sounds familiar. I'm not really sure.
It's really popular. They took, so he eventually did a TED Talk. I think it originally was just like, or no, I think he did a TED Talk, and then somebody went and made like one of those whiteboard animations out of it.
Oh yeah. And
it's like a viral video on YouTube. I think it's one of the it's probably the most watched TED Talk if you go to TED.com. And he's an educator, and you know, teacher, educator, and he's really focused on teaching creativity, and he gives these examples of like, you know, famous composers who, you know, when they were a kid, like their teachers were saying like, oh, you know, there's something wrong with them because they can't sit still in class and all this stuff, and then they bring the kid to, you know, a counselor, and it's like a forward-thinking counselor, and the counselor turns on the music and walks out, and the kid that can't focus on the work, he shuts the door and he brings the parents. He's like, give it a minute and just watch. The kid's just like gets up and starts dancing, all this stuff, and then, you know, like he goes to the parents. I'm telling the story really badly, but he goes to the parents. He's like, there's nothing wrong with your kid. She's a dancer. You know, and then they go and they say, and now 20 years later, she's composed all these amazing dance symphonies and blah, you know, all this stuff that's world famous.
It gives me the goose pimples.
Yeah, even be
yeah,
especially
because you know, it's like the story of my life. You know, I was an artist. That's all I was good at. You know, when I was growing up, was just art, painting, sculptures, like all this stuff. But you know, you kind of get judged through the curriculum, you know, as being a dreamer, just not caring, you know, not working, being irresponsible.
Oh, I like to live on the edge. So, but I mean, some people though really are not like the most creative types. They're more, you know, focused on like, or people have creativity in different areas. Like not everybody's an artist, you know, not everybody's a writer. Some people have different skills and talents, you know, and what if somebody's like, okay, I want to work harder but not smarter, but I don't want to have an idea for a company that I could start and change the world. You know, I don't have an idea for like.
But I mean, I only challenge that because I think that everyone starts out as a creator. Everyone starts out that way, and it's just that the system kind of breaks you down until you forget that you're a creator. And the system you get plugged into perpetuates that further and further and further. Whereas if you take yourself out of the environment, I'm not saying that everybody is a you know, born creator and that everybody should, you know, come up with their own ideas for their own businesses. I mean, I think that you need to find one person, you know, if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to create a product, for example, you probably should be finding somebody who's a natural creator, where it's like they love creativity and they actually just have great ideas all the time, and you know, they swim in great ideas. That should be the person that you connect with and that you're building a business around, and you focus on your strengths.
Well, let me see if I can word it a different way. So like, I know that there are businesses out there that they don't have like an idea that's so good that the idea itself will make the business successful. Like, you're very creative, I'm creative in my own way, and when we work together, ideas spark and we come up with just really amazing stuff. But not everybody has that, has a great idea, but some people make up for it with hustle. You know what I mean? So like, for some people, they've managed to build really successful businesses and companies and you know, lifestyles just by hustling, when they were in the absence of a really good idea.
There's this guy, I remember like 15 years ago when I was like really into cloaking, you know, for SEO and stuff. There was this guy, and I forget his name now. I remembered his name for years because he just stood out of my mind so much. But he was I hate to say it, but like dumb as a bag of rocks. Like he seemed, if you, from the surface, he seemed like total dummy, right? But I mean, if you listen to him write, you know, if you looked at his writing on forums and things like that, so scatterbrained and so like his ideas, he didn't have any great ideas. He didn't have any, he didn't articulate anything clearly. He just seemed like if you wanted to partner with somebody, he'd want to steer far away from this guy. He just didn't seem like he had it together. But he also, I don't think he ever had a month where he made less than $5,000 a month, and this was 15 years ago, to $10,000 a month, because he was such a hustler. I mean, he was just balls to the wall, working his butt off all the time. And he had one key thing that he was really good at, and that was identifying the thing that was going to make money.
Yeah.
And I know another guy in our outfit who's like that too.
I think I know who you're talking about.
I know you know who I'm talking about, and he's the same way.
But this is another like sort of counterpoint, is that some people people that hustle take action, and sometimes people that are thinking like, oh, I don't want to be the hustle, I want to, like, especially a lot of sort of people who are drawn to become an entrepreneur because they're like trying to fight the system and they don't want to be controlled and they want the freedom, which of course we believe in, and we follow that. But a lot of times what might happen is you want to kind of outsmart the system, you want to like hack your way out of the system, and a lot of it is just about not being controlled and having that freedom. But because you want to be so smart and outthink it, you spend all your time thinking and you don't spend your time taking action. You know,
this guy is, I mean, I tell you, both of those types of people, man, if you find somebody who's a major hustler, or somebody who takes massive action and doesn't sit around thinking about it or finding excuses not to, you're going to find somebody who will be successful. I think it's probably the biggest personality trait in entrepreneurism that leads to success. That's why I say it, because this guy, he was, for all intents and purposes, he was not a bright guy at all. I'm saying far, like the spectrum is bag of rocks, you know, like Einstein, he was bag of rocks, you know, and yet he was still more successful than like 90% of the people in that community just for the hustle, you know. So it's like there's a lot of that. There's a lot to be said for the hustle.
Do you think it was entirely hustle, or do you think a lot of it was just because he just took action consistently?
It was the consistency. It was like the massive action, and it was also the one, you know, you have to combine that with actually looking for the money, pointing yourself at the money. You know, if you just take action on weaving, you know, yarn into, I don't know, whatever, like I don't know, like placemat or like coasters, like drink coasters or something, it doesn't mean you're going to be rich. Right. But if you put your energy into running ads or something, you put your energy into a money-making technique that's sound.
What if it was like a drink coaster that kept your drink cold?
Well, then maybe you'd have something. Yeah, so I mean, you know, so it's those people who marry those two things together, though, where they take a lot of action and they point it in the right direction. I think those guys.
Well, I've got a friend who
I'm
always
impressed. When did this happen?
well, you know, we don't talk anymore.
We don't talk anymore.
So we just hang out and have sort of like bar conversations, you know. And he's talking about his idea that he had to get rich. He's really serious about his idea. He says, you can't tell anybody about this idea.
I love conversations that start that way.
So I won't tell you the idea, but it's like he's had this idea for years and years and years. Meanwhile, this whole time, he's had his job, he's had his stuff. Never once has he ever pulled the trigger or taken a risk on it. And even telling the idea to somebody else, it's like he had to swear them to secrecy, you know? And so it's like, this feels awkward. Stop it, please.
Please stop.
You know, so it's like, it comes to this area of like comfort zone and like fear of taking a risk. And we're talking about hustle, but there's like this other topic that we could probably get a whole conversation in on like just pulling the trigger and just doing something, whether it's going to work or not. Like you're never going to know it unless you actually pull the trigger.
Yeah, totally true.
I could aim my shot all day, but until I take it.
Well, there's also a lot to be said about the power of saying no to the wrong things. Ooh. I was back when Ty Lopez and I started this millionaires mastermind in Hollywood, California, and there was a guy by the name of Matt Mikowitz he was on the cover of or he was in the entrepreneur magazine for one of the top entrepreneurs under the age of 30, millionaire entrepreneurs, and he was worth 100 million at that time. He had just sold, what was the site that he sold? It was like 99design.com for, I think it was like 30 or 40 million, something like that at the time. And I remember when we were in our circle, our big mastermind circle, talking about things. One of the questions that we asked as we went around the room was like, what's your biggest weakness? And one of the common threads was that I say yes to too many things. So out of like say 60 millionaires in the room, most common what they would view as being like a problem that they had is they say yes to too many things. Matt Mikowitz was like the only person in the room who said, I say no to too many things. He said, I only have like 3 things. And he started when he was 16 years old. Now he's 30, almost 30. And he'd only said yes to 3 things in his business career. And he was very, 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 very careful about what he said yes to.
But then you look at his results.
Every one of his businesses were very successful. So
he's very picky about what he chose to
He did 99 Designs. Flippa.com, and what was the big forum that he first got started with?
Would I know it?
Yeah, I can't remember what it is.
That was not something I meant to do.
Doesn't really matter because this shot is like an impossible shot anyway for me. So I'm just gonna try it down here. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So you got to say yes to the right things. Don't say yes to too many things.
I mean, we could get off on a lot of tangents here, but if we bring it back to the topic, I'm trying to wrap it up right when I sink the 8 ball.
Yeah, it's going to be unlikely.
Like as far as the hustle goes, sometimes you gotta hustle and sometimes you don't.
Every human being wants to believe that magic is real, and will even just give up all these signs that it's bullshit just so that we can believe it. You see something like, holy shit, that would sell like crack. But the problem is like I can't actually get behind it because I don't believe in it. It's total bullshit. I know it, but I know people would eat it up. You got to have some kind of ethical boundaries that you don't cross.
if you just say, take this and this is what will happen, and then you take it and that happens, then it works whether it's a placebo effect or not.